right, on to our final topic. Earlier today, on Tuesday, July 6th, the new Nintendo Switch model was finally announced. Not the new Nintendo Switch Pro, not the Super Nintendo Switch. It's called the Nintendo Switch OLED model. No press conference either. It was just announced via a tweet and a YouTube video at 9 a.m. Its features are an OLED 7-inch screen, a new wide adjustable stand, a new dock, which has a wired LAN port, 64 gigabytes of internal storage, and new enhanced audio from, I guess, a new design to their speakers. I have a lot of mixed thoughts about this, but I'd like to hear your take on this new Nintendo Switch system.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna preface this by saying this is gonna be a hugely unpopular opinion, but I think this is one of the smartest moves for the Switch, as opposed to a Switch Pro where it would fragment the audience of, oh, who has the power to run this game and who doesn't. I think this is a smarter move. My only issue with it is the price. I think that this should have been, so like you mentioned, 7-inch OLED screen, almost identical to the current Switch. The only kind of major difference is it's a little bit heavier by 226 grams, and it's a little bit longer in the length dimension by 2.55-ish millimeters, which might not sound like a lot, and for most situations it's not. Everything is intercompatible, including the docks between the two models. And the current dock is actually sold out. They're not selling that anymore. So I would imagine you could get this new dock with the integrated LAN and to use with your current Switch because they are compatible, and with the new design as well. But the one reason why this slightly longer device is kind of important is because now this version of the Switch is not compatible with Labo. So if you have Labo and you want to build the Labo kits around your Switch, it would have to be with the original Switch. This new kind of Switch OLED would not fit in those constructions. But otherwise, it's 100% compatible with everything. Joy-Cons, like I mentioned, dock, everything will work alongside. Even cases will work alongside each of the devices, which, like I said, I think is really, really smart. I think that's great for people who maybe just want a better screen and want to upgrade. But now, you could sell your main Switch unit. You don't have to sell your dock if you don't want to. You don't have to sell your Joy-Cons. You don't have to sell anything. You can keep all that stuff and use it with this Switch, which I think is a great idea. Like I said, I do have an issue with the price. I think that if they were going to do this, and right now it wasn't at the point where they could price it at the same cost as the current Switch, which is $299. $399 is the Canadian price. $299 USD and $350 for the Switch OLED.
$349.99.
$349. Yeah, so $299, $349. So $50 difference across most markets, American market and Canadian market, despite the fact that it probably should not be $50 difference in Canadian market, but that's a conversation for another day. The fact is, I really think that they should have waited, considering there isn't a huge upgrade, for them to be able to get this cost at the current Switch price and just replace that unit altogether. Because the fact that there's a premium for this device and you're not really getting much other than the LAN port and the OLED screen really reminds me of something that really annoyed me with the new iMacs, where Apple released, this really expensive computer that had 2 ports and then made you spend $200 to $300 more for 2 more ports, which is kind of frustrating. I understand it's a little bit more reasonable for Nintendo because it's only $50, only in quotes, air quotes, but also, I'd imagine that this is still an expensive console for them to make. I'm sure they're making a profit on it because it's not very powerful, but it's still, I'm pretty sure the profit margins aren't great for this new OLED. So if they were to reduce it to the regular Switch price, I'd imagine maybe they'd be losing, or their margins would be so slim that it wouldn't be worth it. But yeah, that's really my only major issue with it. Overall, I do think that it's smart. It's not forcing people who have a current Switch to get anything new, but it's a great way for if someone wants a Switch to say, hey, there's something that's a little bit better out there that might interest me. But how about you? You said you're kind of mixed on this. How do you feel about it?
I guess I would have to agree. It's a very smart decision, but considering how for months now there have been rumors of a new updated Nintendo Switch with a new processor and 4K output when docked and enhanced frame rate and all this stuff to get pretty like you said, pretty much just a new dock and an OLED screen. I'm disappointed, but it's a strange position, right? Because we've brought this up, or I've brought this up in previous podcasts, right? Nintendo never said they were announcing anything. They never said, hey, we're going to have this new Switch with an OLED screen and 4K output and this, that, and the other. They didn't say any of that. But the way the media cycle goes now, there are a lot of leaks. And this was leaked, and this was supposed to come out on, or during E3. This was supposed to be announced. And nothing happened. And everyone was kind of like, oh, I feel let down from Nintendo. They didn't talk about the new Nintendo Switch. Well, they never said they were going to. So why should we feel let down by Nintendo? Mm-hmm. It's a smart decision. Like you said, it doesn't fracture the Nintendo Switch ecosystem. It's, I think, the second best selling Nintendo, or it's behind the Wii. I'm not sure what the number one is overall. I know the Wii sold 100 million units over its lifetime. I think the Nintendo Switch is currently at 80 million. But like you said, this doesn't fracture the Nintendo Switch family, right? It's not, oh, well, we're designing games for the new Nintendo Switch that can play stuff in 4K and has a enhanced frame rate, and we're not going to design stuff for the old Nintendo Switch system or the Nintendo Switch Lite. Right? I think in terms of if you're just trying to move more Switch units, this is the smart thing to do. But it's been a while since the original Switch came out. I'm ready for a new Switch. And I think on one of our other podcasts when we were talking about this, the rumors of the new Switch Pro before also, right? I was saying that, hey, Breath of the Wild 2 is supposed to be coming out next year, right? I could be convinced. It would be worth it to buy a new upgraded Nintendo Switch if Breath of the Wild 2 came out and there was the way this game is meant to be played is on this new Switch Pro or new Super, whatever they decided to call it, right? But at the moment, this doesn't really change anything for how you play the game, especially since the only change is the OLED, or the most notable change is the OLED. If you ask me, $50 for an OLED screen on this, I'd say it's worth it, right? That's really the biggest thing, right? But that is for a very select person that likes to play it in handheld. I think we've talked before, right? I like to play mine in docked mode. So even if I were to get this new Nintendo Switch system, this OLED model, I wouldn't even benefit from having this enhanced screen, this OLED screen, compared to the LCD screen that I currently have. So it's kind of like, if I could only choose between OLED and 4K output with enhanced frame rates, I would have chose 4K output and enhanced frame rates. But since it's just an OLED, it's not that compelling to, I guess, upgrade consoles, right? You brought up a good point, though. If you're someone who's looking to get a Nintendo Switch, this new, quote unquote premium version makes sense. It makes sense to have this option available for people to buy. So if they were planning to buy a new Switch, you're just getting another $50 out of people, right? That makes sense business wise. But as someone who already has a Switch, this doesn't really make sense to me. And I'm not compelled to go buy this new system, right? But I know that you are someone who likes to play things in handheld mode. How do you feel about this new system? Is this enough of a difference for you to, I guess, go out and buy a new one?
Yeah, so I feel like that's one of the most interesting things about this is like when we were originally talking about the Switch Pro rumors, there was kind of like a huge role reversal where I was saying I wouldn't buy that because that does nothing for me because I only play in handheld. And, there's this new Switch that has a 7-inch OLED screen that's really only beneficial for handheld. And that's not something that would appeal to you because you preferably play in docked mode. And yeah, I feel like this is definitely something I would be interested in. Am I going to get it? Probably not, just because, that's $450 I'd have to find a way to come up with, which really, I don't know. If it was a situation where I didn't have a Switch and there was the current Switch and this Switch, I would absolutely go for the OLED model. Like, that's something I would go for right away. One, I actually like the design of the dock better. It's got like these rounded corners, and obviously it has the Ethernet jack, which I don't use, but I would imagine if I did, it would be really cool, especially if you're playing Smash Brothers or something like that online. Also, the kickstand. I have so many issues with the current Switch's kickstand. It's terrible. It's near useless. The new kickstand it seems like it should be much better. I hope so, because they have a lot to improve on. But it's much larger. It's almost the entire back of the main Switch unit. But it's also adjustable. It's not just one angle. You can put it at multiple angles, kind of like the Surface, the Surface laptop, not Surface laptop, the Surface. I think it's just called the Surface. Anyways, the Surface tablet.
I think it's just
the Microsoft Surface tablet. So it has multiple angles of adjustment, which is great. Still retains micro SD card, like you mentioned. Has a little bit more storage with 64 gigabytes, which probably for most people is still not enough. For me, that doesn't bother me because micro SD cards are so cheap. I would rather them, have the console be affordable to buy, and I could just upgrade the storage later at a cheaper cost. But yeah, I actually really like this thing, and I really want to see what the screen looks like, because if, I talk so much times about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I kind of want to play that game again. If I could play it again and it just looks a little bit better with the OLED screen, or, one of the disappointing things about this is I looked at the specs online. Despite the fact that it's using an OLED screen, which is generally more power efficient, especially with darker colors like blacks, because it doesn't need to light those pixels, the battery life between the models is identical. So you're not getting anything in terms of battery life in this new unit. So that's a little bit disappointing. But yeah, I think overall I am excited about this unit. I would probably get it if I didn't have a Switch. I would definitely get it if I didn't have a Switch. And I might get it because I've always talked about getting another Switch so I could mod my current one. And I wouldn't mind getting this one.
Don't tell Nintendo.
But yeah, well, hey, we're gonna get a Disney sponsor with our callouts for maybe we can get a Nintendo sponsor as well.
We promise not to mod our consoles.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm really interested in this one, and even if I don't get it, I might even just, if I ever need Ethernet, I would probably just pick up the dock, because instead of buying a dongle, why not just get the whole new dock if it's fully compatible? One thing I wish they would do is, because everything is so intercompatible, I wish they would just sell the main Switch body. So I can use my current Joy-Cons and current dock, because all that's compatible. But unfortunately, I don't think that's something they're ever going to do.
I could see a future, and this is a very idealistic future. I don't think this is going to happen because it doesn't make much sense business-wise, I guess. I could see regular revisions to the Switch happening like this, where every 2 years they release a new Switch model, which is a little bit better, right? So maybe in 2 more years they come out with a new Switch where it's an OLED display and 4K output. And then 2 years from there, it's the Switch Lite 2, which also has an OLED display, and it's a bigger 7-inch display. And then 2 more years from that, it's okay, here's our new Switch AMOLED model, right? And it's more regular revisions as opposed to completely redesigning everything, right? When you look at the GameCube to the Wii to the Wii U to the Switch, those are all very different consoles, right? But when you look at the Switch to the Switch Lite to this new Switch OLED model, they're all Switches, but they're all very similar. And in my dream world, Nintendo would just release Switches from here on out. I've said this multiple times. I think this is the perfect console. The perfect console because it's handheld, it's docked, you can play it on the go at home, you just pick it up and go. I think every console should be like this. It makes the most sense to me. It would make even more sense if, like you said, you could just buy the main section, the screen, essentially, the screen and the hardware in that main section, right? If you could go to the Nintendo store and you could say, yep, I'd like the new Switch OLED screen model. And then you take it home, all your old accessories work, your old dock works, everything else works, and you just plop it in the dock, you start playing. And then 2 years from now, when the new 4K Switch comes out, hopefully, you can just buy that new 4K main console. And same thing, all your old parts work, all your old accessories, your old dock, old everything works, and you just upgrade more regularly, but you upgrade as you see fit. So that way, let's say in the next upgrade, the next theoretical upgrade, when this new 4K Switch comes out, maybe you just bought the OLED model and you say, you know what? I don't need to get this upgrade because I just got the OLED model. So maybe I'll wait until something else more compelling comes out and then I could get that one, right? So, I mean, it's a pipe dream. Definitely don't think it's going to happen. But the way that this console is so modular, and when you think about the Joy-Cons and the dock and the screen, like, it is a very modular system. That would be like my ideal future for what Nintendo does with the Switch. My dream. I don't think it's going to happen, but you know, I can dream, I guess. And one little extra thing, this console is coming out on October 8th. It's coming in two colors, sort of like the classic blue and red Joy-Cons with just a black console and black dock, and a white model where the dock is white, the Joy-Cons are white. And it's coming out on October 8th, the same day as Metroid Dread. And the first game they showed when debuting this new OLED Switch is Metroid Dread, which has this, this main villain in the game, this main robot, which is a white robot chasing you around. This was clearly supposed to launch at the same time. I could picture the press conference now, right? As they're revealing Metroid Dread, now played on this new OLED Nintendo Switch, themed after I can't even remember what it's called, like a Timmy or Mini, or it's called some weird name, some weird cute name for this killer robot that's chasing you the whole game. But it looks like a Metroid Dread themed Nintendo Switch, and it would have made so much sense if it came out at the same time, and it probably was supposed to be announced at the same time, and for whatever reason, which we'll probably never know, it didn't happen. But it's a little bit of corroboration for the leakers at Bloomberg, or the analysts, or I'm not sure what they're called, reporters, that this is in fact coming out on October 8th, the same day as Metroid Dread, the game that was debuted at E3. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I found that interesting.
Yeah, no, and you're 100% right. Like, I think it's called, that robot's called like an Emmy or something like that, where it has that same kind of white and black design of the white version of the new Switch OLED. And I, like I said, I really like the color combination. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on the modularity. I would be so happy if maybe even if they did, this year is the new version of the main Switch body, and then next year is the new version of the Switch Lite, and then the year after that there's a Switch body with a slightly better processor, because these machines are technically powered by cell phone processors, and those upgrade every year. So why can't a Switch processor slightly upgrade every year?
And it was old at the time that the Switch came out too.
Yeah. So it's like, those are things that I would love to see. Maybe a new Joy-Con design that still fits in that same slot, and a new dock that, those are things I would love to see them do, where you could just get these things separately. If you wanted a new dock with a Ethernet jack, we made that for you. If you wanted a new screen with OLED, or a new body with OLED, we made that for you. If you want a new Joy-Con that has a D-pad. We have that as well. So like all those kind of modular things that you can just get in pieces and then combine them. And honestly, I think they could probably make a lot more money for that, because you see how many people are willing to upgrade their phones faster just because a new one comes out every year. I would imagine people would be like, oh, I'm going to sell the old Switch body and get the new one, or just have two Switch bodies just because, hey, they brought out a new one with an OLED screen, or they brought a new one out with a mini LED screen, or, is now 1080p. So like all those different little incremental changes they could make, I think would convince people just to spend money on something they probably wouldn't make a huge difference, but cool nonetheless.
Yeah. And the robot is called Emmy. It's EMMI. But I mean, you brought up a good point, right? And you think Nintendo is such a family company, right? The Switch is such a family system. All their systems are family systems. I mean, I was gonna say what's more family than like everyone having a Switch, but the whole idea is everyone plays around this one Switch, so it brings a family together. If you sell everyone in the family their own Switch, that kind of just like fractures the family even more. But I mean, I think it would make a lot of business sense if you regularly upgraded the Switch and you give people reasons to buy new Switches, right? You give people a reason to buy a new console quicker than they would necessarily buy one before, right? Because usually console generations are like 6 to 10 years maybe, and you brought up a good strategy there, right? 2 years new Nintendo Switch, next 2 years new Nintendo Switch Lite, and they just go back and forth like that, and they continue to give people reasons to upgrade, right? So it's every 4 years you're buying a new console, and not gonna happen, but I think it'd be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to this Switch. I'm looking forward to breakdowns, and there's even some talks that maybe there will be 4K output enabled through some sort of software update in the future, but once again, those are just rumors, and Nintendo said nothing of the sort, so don't go getting your hopes up like I did. But yeah,